All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Bright and early Sunday morning. Of course, I've got my coffee here. Hopefully, you are doing well. If you are here live and joining in or catching the replay, welcome. So, this session is really not about, hey, here's some tools and here's what this looks like, but really getting back to the basics, so to speak, I guess I would say. And that is taking a look at where's the human element, the value that we bring in this continual iteration of emerging tech in our society. And obviously, right now, the big emerging tech space is around AI. And so the whole presentation, whether you got a chance to check it out or not, I know it's early, is designed to give you some food for thought and some considerations as we try to figure out what is AI, how do we teach with AI, how do we teach about AI, how do we think about the next continued layers of where that student element comes from and all those types of things. And so that's really the crux of what this presentation is to get us back thinking about questions maybe we haven't thought about asking ourselves or our school or our district. Maybe more importantly, bringing back to light some questions that maybe we used to ask ourselves and we haven't in a while. So a couple things here as we get going, because I do believe in as much interaction as we can possibly have. And so as questions pop in, if already, obviously we will address those as we go. But I have some things that I'm going to put in the chat, and I believe they'll pop up here. But first is whether you're watching live or if you want to come back into this, is this human element piece. And so I've put together this mural for us where you can go in and kind of put together your own little business card, the A side, B side, which is really designed for you to, who are you professionally and who are you personally? Because through this and maybe some things that we've learned, and there's some other question prompts within this mural, you can find some opportunities to maybe connect with other people. And as we think about this, as I will dive into some of the questions that I typically get when I present and do some things around AI, I think at this point in time, I've easily done over 40 professional developments, both in the schools I support, online, across the U.S. You know, there are some trends or questions that continue to arise. But obviously, if you have some, throw those in there. But as we think about this, I see some of the excitement around the space of AI through the lens of getting back to this question that I know we've asked ourselves many times, but what is the purpose of school? And more importantly, as we get into this work, how do we maximize the class time, the learning space time? Because not all of us are necessarily in a classroom with students, to make the best bang for our buck. And are we maximizing the time we have with students in the right way? I'm not saying what we're doing is wrong, but as generative AI has hit the scene, there's been some challenges, right, to the friction of AI being able to do some of the homework that we've assigned, to be able to do some of the assessments that, you know, all the big kind of short-term emotional rahs, right, that, oh my gosh, students are cheating and all these things. And so it's less about what we sometimes do unintentionally so well in education, which is attack things from a deficit mindset thinking. How do we be more proactive in this work? And so some of this is thinking about, okay, why do I give homework? What is the point of homework? What is the purpose of school? What is the point of what it is that I'm teaching? And how do we come back to those elements? And what is it that we want our students to be able to walk away with at the end of the day? There's lots of talk around the lack of creativity, the lack of thinking. And one of the things that I have found in working with the AI space, when we empower not just our adults and the professionals in the field, but now also students, to use prompting and to use these tools and to use them the right way, requires all those skills that we're worried that AI is going to replace, to use them effectively. I see it as an opportunity to expedite, maybe work through some of the stages of lower levels of depth of knowledge, DOK 1 and 2, at a quicker rate, so we can get into the stuff that we love doing in teaching, and that's working with kids and small group and Socratic seminar and all the things that we're trying to find time to do that we simply just run out of time. And how could we leverage maybe AI and some of the processes to get to opportunities for that deeper level thinking, deeper level connections, relationships, things of that nature. So that's really kind of the crux of the presentation that I had. And it was funny, actually. I'm kind of rambling here as I look forward to see if there's any questions rolling in. I was at a concert last night, and it made me think about the classroom or the education space and that energy that comes. And I'm not saying that every single lesson you need to have a concert rock star event feeling. That's not realistic. But what I was thinking about it was the ambiance of our learning space. What's the feel and the vibe of our classroom, of our hallways, of our office, wherever your space might be? And it got me thinking back to the concept, right, of like, what's our wow? Who are we? Does our identity come through? Do we have a space that allows students to be themselves? And what does that look like? And this is not going out and buying a bunch of Pinterest worthy things and stick them up on the walls. I mean, it's got to be you. It's got to be organic. But thinking about the ambience, set the scene for what it is that you're after. I think about being in that crowd last night, and there's an energy that comes when people are aligned. Thinking about the classroom space, when we're with students, how do we create a similar energy through inquiry and the wonder, and get kids to ask questions, and to have some celebration when there's aha moments, kind of like when we sing along at a song. And so I was kind of thinking through those elements, and I think we need to get back to that. I think we've been so burdened with so many initiatives and mandates and data and all the things that I know you all know, but in our sliver of light in our space, the things that we can control, what are we doing with that? And so as you're working through that and thinking through some of those things, and maybe you've got a chance to jump there into the mural, and if you haven't, no worries. But in there, I put in a prompt, which is also kind of fun for you to think about and put in there, is to create a pixelized version of yourself. And so I'll throw this in here as well, where you can go through and create your own little pixelated version of you and stick that in there in that mural as well. And so I'm going to throw this, I believe this will go where it needs to go. It's so a couple things as we think about this human element piece. And again, I'm not sure if you've seen the presentation or not, but I'm going to start with a couple key pieces, and maybe this will give us some food for thought for questions. And let me see if I can switch over my screen here. This might make life a little bit easier for you. So within this space here, there was a guest on my podcast back in episode 182, and in here he provided this mindset way of thinking. And so I can't take credit for it, but there's not a day that goes by where I don't consider some of these options, because it just makes so sense. Maybe it's just my nerdy love for comic books and video games. But he posed this Iron Man assessment conundrum, because I think at the end of the day, probably the biggest threat to us as educators is our assessment practices, right? And I would challenge, and we're not going to have time to uncover this here in the next 20 minutes. Why are we assessing what we're assessing? Why do we even assess in the first place? And I know maybe it seems like an obvious answer, but really, really thinking about why do we do what we do, both for the students and then also on our end. But part of that conversation around assessment, because if we have a fear around AI with cheating and doing all the work, I like to play devil's advocate and say, well, then why are we doing that work? And I know there's certain things we've got to teach. I know there's certain things that we think kids need to know. Again, it's just to kind of poke and prod on our processes, our instructional practices and moves to question why we put so much emphasis on certain things. But in here, he phrases it this way, and it is, if Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, were your student, or if you're not in the class, your employee or colleague, how would you assess his abilities? And so a couple of things with this. When I'm talking Iron Man, just in case people aren't aware of Iron Man and Tony Stark, you've got the man, right? You've got Tony Stark in the suit, the philanthropist, billionaire, right? The guy, the human being. We then have Iron Man in terms of the suit itself that allows Tony to do things that he can't do as a human. And in between there, you have Jarvis, or if you want to get real nerdy, there was another AI interface he had called Friday. This is the AI that allows Tony and the suit to make real-time decisions to be that hero. I frame it this way, or Justin does too, thinking about how do we view, how do we assess, how do we think about our students? And in this case, if Iron Man then was in your classroom, what would you allow? What would you assess? Would you assess Tony? Would you assess the AI? Would you assess the suit? Would you say, absolutely, we're going to go non-tech? Tony, you got to take the suit off because it's not fair. Like, where do we land in this? And none of this is right or wrong. It is simply food for thought for you to be thinking about. And so if we think about a little bit here of Tony, okay, or AI, or the interaction of Tony and AI and the tech, where was your focus? That's kind of your own kind of personal thought question for you to think about, because we are already doing this now with the idea of one-to-one and devices and the tech tools and all the website platforms and all the things. You know, how much are we really leveraging and assessing truly the student now, or is it a combination of things? You know, and so as we think through this, you know, if we were to just assess Tony, no Jarvis and no tech suit, right? We know what the human can do. Tony Stark, aka yourself, aka any student in your classroom, can be creative and is innovative and can experience emotions, and we can adapt. And we've proven that time and time again, not just in education, but in life, right? Some of you have maybe already adapted this morning to be here on this call and to check out this live stream. But there's things that we are limited as a human system. You know, we can't process large amounts of data quickly. I know we do, the brain and all that does stuff, but I'm talking in terms of like, hey, I've got all these assessments. Now what am I going to do? It takes a lot of time. It's not instantaneously, right? We need rest. We get tired. We know the importance of sleep and fatigue, hence teacher burnout, right? And, you know, if we want to get kind of fun, nerdy, Tony's not shooting energy blast out of his palms by himself. And so as we think about that, the question posed into the presentation is, despite his limitations, what are some of the key attributes? What is important? What is fundamental to being human? And thinking about those, how are you cultivating a learning space and a culture for those attributes, for those skills, for those mindsets to be developed, and an opportunity for kids to find those skills, mindsets, dispositions within themselves? You know, if we get into this piece, and maybe I don't think a lot of people are necessarily to this stage yet, based on just working with the schools and that I'm in where they're trying to leverage AI like within the classroom to teach with AI. But it's some good things to think about that if we were to assess the AI, in this case, we're going to assess Jarvis. You know, it's the 5-year anniversary of Endgame. We need to go back and watch some Marvel. Sorry, my squirrel brain running here. I'm just looking at this graphic here. But if we think about AI, right, and we're thinking through this, what can AI do? It can process data so fast, so quick. That's what large language models do. It can give us real-time feedback, maybe not always the best feedback or accurate, but it can happen quick. We're seeing that in sports. We're seeing it in the medical field. These are not just like education moves. These are things that have already been happening for a long time. The use of AI to get real-time data on things. But there's things that it can't do. It's not sentient. It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't understand ethical implications. And even if it pretends to do it, it's going to be biased by the training data set that's been provided to it. And so then how do we think about layering this element? How do we think about this to kind of, we've heard the word probably multiple times if you've been at any AI training, how do we use this to kind of augment the human experience, to be able to use our human skills in new ways with the addition of having some AI tools at our disposal. And then the last piece here then is kind of like this symbiotic interface, right? So if we want to be able to leverage AI and any emerging tech, I mean, right now we're talking AI, but emerging tech, what used to be a pencil, to be able to write and write down thoughts. Back in the days of Socrates, that was considered the end of all knowledge. That was considered the end of humans being able to think at one point. Like that used to be the conundrum that they believed, and we should all have everything here, the storyteller, right? And then chalkboards used to be a problem. You can see there's some old case studies from Harvard and Yale where people left the room because a chalkboard was being used. I mean, so we have overcome things that now seem trivial. And not that AI is going to be trivial, but this is the common occurrence with any emerging tech. So as we think about our adjustments through time, I think about then this element for our classroom and for our teaching and learning is now we got to have something to deliver. This is that tech side. And tech has made us excited in education for a long time. We go to conference, we go to the booths to see whatever the new next shiny tech object is. And we're seeing that now with AI, with the 18 million tools that are out there. And there's some really fantastic ones, but we get excited on that piece. But it's coming back to what's that symbiotic interface? What's that look like for us as teachers and as students? And so when we merge AI and the human with the layer of tech, in this case, it's Tony Stark's Iron Man suit. That's how he operates. That's his tech space there to work with Jarvis. It does enhance his abilities. I joke that he can now survive a missile strike, but it gives him real-time AI information to do real-time decision-making interactions that previously were not able to do. And we can do that kind of work faster. And so be able to adjust that and handle that, the human skills are more important than ever before. Education is more important than ever before. And we start to see that, there is a relationship. The tech can't do anything by itself without Tony or Jarvis, right? Just your Chromebooks that you issue your students can't do anything unless kids put fingers to the keyboard and the mouse and they have a purpose and they know what it is that they're after, whether we like that purpose or not. And so how do we leverage that kind of space? And that was the whole kind of crux of this whole presentation with some activities and things built in. I'm looking here to see if there's any questions, making sure I'm not just rambling and overlooking anything that people have here. But as we think about this, some of these questions that I pose for you is, what is the purpose of formal education at scale? Getting back to why are we doing what we're doing? And we had that kind of question posed to us not too long ago with COVID. And I think we learned some things, but did we go back to just normal routine, or did we actually put some of those new thoughts into action? Getting back to this piece of assessment, which I think is truly the $1 million question. What does that look like? I just wrote a piece because I've been getting weekly questions around the idea of, oh my gosh, like I think I have a kid that used AI to do the work, where they call it cheating or not. It's a concern. And so it's, how do we work proactively in this space? Our humans, kids are learning. And if we haven't taught them how to use AI, if we haven't put in the policies for AI to be used to leverage those types of things, have we had the conversations, have we done these things with students, I don't think we can get upset with them if they're going to use it until we have put some things into place. But I'll put this here. Again, I don't know if it'll make it over or not, but this was the piece that I just wrote. It was based off, I've had a series of emails lately about this. And so how do we work proactively? How do we talk with the student? Ask them to defend their work, showcase that. More importantly, if a kid is turning in a final product and we assume AI is being used, we should have a bunch of things in place already, drafts, small group conversations, one-on-one check-ins, things along the way that we should know whether the kid knows that information or not. And so if all we're doing is issuing a research paper or an essay, and we're not doing anything with the kid from the date of the assignment to the day we collect it, right? You're telling your kid a couple things. One, maybe we really don't care about the content. And number two, where are the checkpoints? It's this human element piece. Where are we doing along the way where we know before we even get to the final product if a kid has it or not? So that mindset of process over product, I think is going to be really, really important for us to think through if you haven't already moved to that type of mindset. You know, and as we think about just some other things in here, I want to pop down to some stuff from Teach AI, which is another great website where it's a bunch of the big companies and organizations that are doing lots of fantastic work, not just with AI, but tech in general. Has some incredible slides and resources that you can use. And to me, this is one of the things we think about when we think about humanity, and we want to teach and develop good citizens for our world. And I believe that students want to figure out how to be the best version of themselves, even if they may not always act like it. But if we don't address AI in education, I think the negatives outweigh the positives. And that to me is scary, that we've been doing this work, talking this work. Generative AI has been around for over a year and a half, and it's still a slim margin of folks that are thinking about how to be proactive and what this looks like in our classrooms and our schools. And it's just because we're so many things on the plate already. It's not a blast to anybody. But we need to start having conversations that help students realize that AI is not authoritative. There is misinformation. There are errors. There's going to be academic dishonesty because we're human. So when we teach, we worry about this with AI having those types of things. But I think when we teach and we have conversations, we're not 100% accurate all the time either. And so the data and ourselves, how are we balancing that? You know, we have a huge concern here of a digital divide that could be crazy exponentially stronger if we're not having these conversations. And we had that digital divide when the internet came on the scene. And we had it again as schools started to go one-to-one, and not everybody did. And then COVID hit, and that really kind of forced everybody to bring it up. But I would still argue that, have we actually even taught the skills of how to leverage one-to-one correctly? Or did we just move from analog worksheets to digital worksheets without the training of how to leverage these tools for more engagement and interaction? And so if we don't do the same thing with AI, we're going to leave a lot of kids behind. The job market, AI is woven into about every single job description anymore. And if we're only going to wait for the parents or the kids to figure it out, not everybody has those opportunities. And we are learning what happens when we just put stuff out into the ether without guardrails with social media. I think AI is something that we need to be proactive about. And what does this look like? And how do we educate ourselves and our students and our parents and the community on what it is, what it isn't, and how it can strengthen who we are as humans. And so I got a couple minutes here left. I'm not sure if there's any questions that have popped in. I'm checking. But what I want to, one thing I will put in here, and there's based on the mural for the resources. I have everything captured here. I can put this also here. I made a wakelet. I don't think it made it into the presentation website, but I've gathered a whole bunch of resources for you to explore. But this is a great activity here. If you're looking for something to do yourself, or to run maybe an activity with students around AI, this here is, you can have everybody do the same task. This is just a way to use visuals to get back to the importance and reminding ourselves, our students, whoever we're working with, that all the things we're trying to teach, communication, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, flexibility, all these types of things are needed more than ever with these tools. And so this is an activity here where you can divide them into groups or have them all do the same thing, and they're going to work to create a coloring book page of a season, or you can make it whatever. And there's some tools in the wakelet that I provided. There's a column there called coloring book activity, so you can create some images for free with some websites, and then we share that out. And the goal here is, as you think about how to write your prompt to get that coloring book page, what goes into that. We need to know words. We need to know vocab. We need to have some background knowledge. We actually need to know what seasons are. Or in Iowa, like, what is a winter Iowa? What is a spring Iowa? Well, spring Iowa could be whatever you want, because every day it's something different. But also now we can get into like flora and fauna and ambience and colors and unique events. And it's just like, what are those things? So I've done this with kids. I'm like, what is flora? Like, oh, so now we're creating some curiosity. What does that mean? Let's explore. So how can we leverage these maybe as a launch into something we're teaching, or just as we work through this and we share these ideas out, all the vast differences that come with it. But what I want to bring to light with an activity like this, I will find my slide that I want to share with you, is this research, this stuff here of Scarborough's reading rope. We'll probably come across this if you're in education, at least I hope you have. We need all these things in order to leverage AI or anything really with any good capacity to do good work. We've got background knowledge, we've got to have vocab. So this is just a reminder that we still need to be doing the things we're doing. We just might have to start doing it differently and assessing it differently and rethinking how we're currently using, minimizing or maximizing our class time while we have humans in our learning space to do something with that. And that's what I want to get to, is this work here is so fundamental to keep moving this work forward, to do good quality work. And so that's an activity in there that is really good. I've labeled in another activity here that would be helpful for you as well. This is just a Pictionary where the kids see an image, and the kids then have to figure out what would be the prompt to create that same one. So we're kind of getting into wordplay here a little bit, and at the end of the day, I guess I'll close here, as I know we're coming up here on time, is this comes back to this concept I've been kind of toying with called human pedagogy. How do we keep the human in the center of the loop, human first forward, and what is it that we're trying to do? And then looking at our practices and saying, are our practices aligned with our goals and values? And I think with all the pressures and just the stress and day-to-day things, we might need to realign some of that work. So that's my time, more of a ramble than anything. I didn't see any questions, but if there's anything you want or need or want to reach out more about through the slides or the activities or all the resources, feel free to reach out. Always glad to help. And I appreciate your time here and hope you have a fantastic rest of day 3 of the conference, and moving forward, kicking butt and taking names, and doing the best version of ourselves, because that's all that we can do and control at the end of the day. So I thank all of you. If there's any comments afterwards, I will follow up, and enjoy the rest of your conference, everybody. Peace.